Paul Walker was more than just a movie star. To millions, he was the face of speed, the man behind the wheel in Fast and Furious, the guy who made fast cars look cool. But what happened after his death revealed something even deeper. When Paul died in a tragic crash in 2013, the world was shaken. Fans mourned. Tributes poured in. But away from the cameras, something even more personal was unfolding. His family, friends, and business partners were faced with a heartbreaking task going through the things he left behind. And that's when they opened the doors to his private garage. What they found stunned everyone. Inside was a hidden world of over 30 ultra-rare vehicles, many never shown to the public. Some weren't even street legal in the United States. But these weren't just expensive toys. Each car told a story. Each one carried a memory, a secret, or a dream. Some even held handwritten notes. Others had connections to unfinished projects or charity plans no one knew about. And as they dug deeper, they realized this wasn't just a garage. It was Paul Walker's legacy. On screen, Paul was Brian O'Connor, the undercover cop with a love for cars and speed. But that role wasn't just acting. Paul was a true gearhead in real life. He lived and breathed horsepower. He didn't just collect cars. He understood them. He worked on them. He built them piece by piece. He never bragged about it. You didn't see him flaunting his collection online or giving tours to magazines. That wasn't his style. His garage was his sanctuary, a quiet place where he could escape, get his hands dirty, and feel at peace. He shared it with almost no one, not even most of his friends. But after his death, that private space was opened for the first time. What they saw took their breath away. Inside a large, locked facility in Valencia, California, over 30 rare and valuable cars were packed tightly side by side. These weren't ordinary vehicles. They were machines most car lovers only dream about. A dream lineup hidden in plain sight. There was a 1995 BMW M3 Lightweight, a rare performance model with only around 125 ever made. Paul didn't own just one, he had 5. Beside it was a Celine S7, a carbon fiber American hypercar known for brutal speed and even rarer production numbers. There were 4 GTs, Porsche 911S, and of course a Toyota Super Turbo, a quiet nod to his Fast and Furious past. But what really shocked everyone was his Nissan Skyline GTR collection. Paul had personally imported several versions of the R32 and R34 models. These weren't stock cars. Each one had been tuned with racing parts. They had handwritten logs tracking their performance, tuning adjustments, and notes on how they handled during test runs. One R34 GTR, possibly the same one he drove in the movies, had been stored in secret. A piece of movie history never shown to the public, never even registered for the street. But as they began to inventory the collection, something odd kept coming up. Most of the vehicles weren't registered in Paul's name. They were tied to a performance company he co-founded, Always Evolving, a racing and tuning business started with his close friend Roger Rodas, who also died in the 2013 crash. At first glance, the company seemed like a normal high-end garage, fixing and customizing performance cars. But behind the scenes, Always Evolving served another purpose. It held ownership of dozens of Paul's rare vehicles. This setup protected Paul's privacy, offered tax benefits, and allowed for flexibility in how the cars were handled or sold. But after Paul died, this legal structure caused chaos. Some cars were split between company and personal titles. Some had loans or repair shop debt attached. Others were meant for sale or charity. Sorting through it all became a nightmare. As if that wasn't enough, some of the cars had legal complications of their own. Many of Paul's Japanese imports, especially the Skylines, were never truly legal for American roads. He had brought some in using a loophole called show and display, which allowed rare cars to be imported for exhibitions only. They couldn't be registered or driven like normal vehicles. One insider claimed that one of the Skylines had questionable paperwork and would have never passed U.S. emissions or safety rules. But Paul didn't care. He didn't import these cars to drive them daily. He imported them because he wanted them in their purest form, just as they were built in Japan, without compromises. He even helped fund a legal push to get one Skyline cleared through U.S. Customs. It wasn't about breaking rules. It was about honoring the car's heritage. But the most powerful discoveries weren't under the hoods. They were inside the cars. As his team began going through the interiors, they started finding notes, scribbled on paper scraps, written on sticky notes, or tucked into center consoles. These weren't reminders or technical specs. They were personal thoughts. One note inside a Skyline said, "Feels like flying. Smooth, angry, alive." Another inside a BMW M3 read, "Might be the cleanest one left. Don't flip it." These weren't messages for anyone else. They were Paul's own thoughts, quiet, emotional, and deeply human. But the most touching note of all, found in a GTR scrawled in blue ink on a post-it. "This one's for Meadow. She'll drive it one day." A gift, a promise, a future he never got to see. And not every car was complete. Some were unfinished projects. Cars missing doors with exposed wires, unpainted panels, or stripped interiors. But these weren't abandoned. They were works in progress. One classic muscle car still had a to-do list written in marker on the windshield. A Datsun 240Z sat gutted, rumored to be his next personal ride. Another old-school Mustang was being restored for a friend. These cars weren't about profit. They were about love. Paul was hands-on. He spent hours in the garage with tools in hand, covered in grease, fixing, building, modifying. Friends remembered how he'd lose track of time, debating exhaust setups or wiring new gauges. This was his happy place, and those unfinished builds? They were dreams he didn't get to finish. Among the hypercars and tuner icons was something unexpected. Cars tagged for charity, sticky notes marked with RO or ROWW were taped to dashboards. These tags stood for Reach Out Worldwide, Paul's own disaster relief nonprofit. It was founded quietly in 2010. He never promoted it loudly. He just wanted to help. The tags meant that some of these rare, expensive cars were meant to be auctioned off to fund relief efforts. One was a heavily modified Toyota Supra, never used in a movie, but every bit as iconic. Another was a Boss 302 Mustang with a note pointing to a future gala event that never happened. These weren't tributes added after his death. They were his own plans, still in motion when time ran out. But then came the hardest part. The garage wasn't just full of memories, it was also full of legal complications. The estimated value of Paul's collection? Over $18 million. That kind of money brought lawsuits, disputes, and bitter fights. Paul's father acted as executor. His daughter, Meadow, was the main heir. Together, they had to figure out which cars were personal, which were company-owned, and which were still in limbo. Some titles were missing. Some cars were part of loan deals. Others were claimed by creditors or former business partners. What began as a painful goodbye quickly turned into a legal war zone. In 2020, 21 cars were auctioned off. They brought in over $2.3 million, but not all were sold. Some were quietly held back by the family, others vanished from public records. The garage that once brought Paul so much peace had become a battleground of paperwork, court filings, and greed. For Meadow, the garage was never about money. She was just 15 when Paul died. Going through each car meant stepping back into her father's world. Every engine, every note, every unfinished project was a reminder of the man she lost. His handwriting on a post-it. His favorite radio station is still playing in a Porsche. A wrench left beside an open engine bay. It was like he had just stepped out and never came back. Some friends cried when they walked in. Others couldn't bring themselves to enter. The hardest part wasn't the rare cars. It was seeing the things Paul never got to finish, the future he never got to live. Some vehicles had ties to Roger Rodas. That made it even more painful. 2 lives lost. 1 garage was left behind. To outsiders, it looked like steel, rubber, and fiberglass. But to those who loved Paul, it was sacred ground. Narrator. In the end, what they found in Paul Walker's garage wasn't just shocking, it was life-changing. Behind the million-dollar cars and exotic imports was a man who never cared about the spotlight. Paul didn't collect cars for clout. He didn't need to be seen. He just loved the sound of an engine, the smell of oil, the quiet focus of a late-night build. He didn't want this garage to be discovered. He never expected the world to see it. But when they did, they found who he really was. A quiet builder. A man who gave without asking for credit. A father who left behind more than money. He left behind his passion, his purpose. And today, that spirit lives on in the roar of engines, the mission of Reach Out worldwide, and the hearts of fans who now understand Paul Walker wasn't playing a car guy. He was one. And that, more than anything, is what they truly found in his garage.